welcome to this deep dive. I want you to start today by asking yourself, a truly mind-bending question.
Oh, I love these.
Right. Okay, so is your biggest problem simply how you think about problems?
Hmm.
Like, do your eyes only see in a straight line?
Which, is how most of us are trained to see.
Exactly. Because if you are navigating the modern professional world, it is incredibly easy to get trapped in this tunnel vision.
Oh, yeah. The daily to-do lists.
The quarterly goals, the immediate hair-on-fire crises.
Yeah, the stuff that just keeps you reacting.
Right. But what if the way out of that tunnel requires you to completely change your lens on the world?
It's a crucial question. We spend so much time obsessing over the mechanics of our daily work.
Optimizing this, streamlining that.
Yeah, exactly. That we rarely step back to ask the fundamental question, which is, what needs to exist right now that does not already exist?
That is heavy.
It is.
Yeah.
But that is the kind of questioning that breaks you out of linear paint-by-numbers thinking.
And that actually brings us perfectly to the core source material for today's deep dive.
Yes.
We are looking at a brilliantly insightful article by David J. Abbott. It's titled, Applying Leonardo da Vinci's Techniques to Business Problem Solving.
Such a great concept.
It really is. And our mission today is to explore how the painting techniques of an artist who lived, over 500 years ago,
Right.
combined with some heavy-hitting lessons from modern history,
Mhm.
can completely revolutionize the way you approach business strategy and complex problem solving.
We are essentially building a bridge between the Renaissance and the modern boardroom.
I love that visual. Okay, let's unpack this.
We should probably start with the fact that when most of us think of business strategy, our minds immediately go to spreadsheets.
Data analytics.
Right, Gantt charts, incredibly rigid 5-year plans. We almost never think of a solitary painter standing in front of an empty canvas.
No, definitely not.
But Abbott's article makes a really compelling argument that we actually should be viewing strategy through that exact artistic lens.
Right. And Abbott introduces this by looking at how Leonardo da Vinci actually began his work.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at Leonardo's notebooks, he didn't just start painting perfect final strokes on day one.
Not at all.
His notebooks they're absolutely crammed with messy, chaotic initial sketches.
Just trying to figure it out.
Exactly. He would start with a very loose design to define what he wanted to achieve.
Visualizing the end goal.
Right, the essence of it.
Yeah.
He did that before he committed to the heavy lifting of mixing paints and applying them to wood.
And in the modern business world, we'd call this visualization.
Right.
It's like dreaming up an innovative product to solve a pressing customer problem.
You don't build the multi-million-dollar factory first.
Exactly. You sketch the idea on a whiteboard.
But that transition from the whiteboard sketch to reality, that is where most companies completely stumble.
Oh, absolutely. And what's fascinating here is how Leonardo built upon those initial rough sketches.
Because he didn't just jump straight to the finish line.
No, he didn't jump from a pencil outline to a finished glossy masterpiece in one single leap. He added layers.
Okay, so how does that translate?
Well, if we bring that into a business context, this translates perfectly to the concept of developing small test pilots.
Instead of a massive global rollout.
Exactly. Rolling out a massive, untested final product across your entire organization is incredibly risky.
And frankly, how billions of dollars are wasted every year.
Right. So instead, you introduce a small, localized approach to address the problem. You test the waters.
You observe the feedback.
Yes. And then you add another layer.
But, okay, let's play devil's advocate.
Sure.
If I go to my CEO or my board and say, hey, I'm just going to do a rough sketch and, slowly add layers.
They're going to lose it.
Right. They're going to demand a final ROI and a concrete timeline immediately. Corporate culture hates the idea of things being unfinished or blurry.
It does.
We want hard data. We want distinct lines.
Which is exactly why Abbott highlights one of the most famous techniques in art history. One that Leonardo absolutely mastered to deal with that exact issue of distinct lines. The technique is called Sfumato.
Sfumato. That's the technique that gives the Mona Lisa that dreamlike, three-dimensional, almost mysterious effect, right?
Exactly. Sfumato. The word itself is Italian for smoke.
Smoke.
Yeah. It's an incredibly delicate, time-consuming painting technique. Leonardo realized that in the real world, objects don't have harsh, solid black outlines drawn around them like a cartoon.
Right. Nature doesn't have outlines.
Exactly. Reality is hazy. So instead of painting distinct shapes with rigid borders, Leonardo would apply numerous microscopically thin, translucent layers of oil paint.
Wow.
sometimes just a micron thick.
Just a micron.
Yeah, he would build up these layers over time to create smoky, seamless transitions between colors and tones. There are no hard edges in a Sfumato painting.
It all blend.
It all blends.
So if he's not painting hard lines, what is he actually doing with the brush? Because if we apply that Sfumato technique to modern business strategy, it sounds like the absolute opposite of a rigid corporate plan.
It is the exact opposite. It's the equivalent of continually testing, blending, and refining your strategy based on constant feedback and real-world results.
You're adjusting as you go.
Yes. You are deliberately eliminating the harsh outlines of your original rigid master plan and letting the strategy evolve naturally as it makes contact with reality.
Which makes sense, because Abbott notes that Leonardo would refine his approach in stages over days, weeks, and sometimes years.
Yeah.
He was constantly looking at the big picture while adjusting the multiple layers and perspectives based on what the paint was actually doing on the canvas.
And that requires a massive mental shift. You can only experiment and iterate like that if you acknowledge a very uncomfortable truth.
Very good.
Things are not going to go exactly as planned.
Right.
You cannot force a rigid outline onto a reality that is constantly shifting.
Which means we have to talk about unpredictability.
We do.
Because Leonardo's Sfumato works precisely because reality is blurry and volatile. And in business, surprises are an absolute constant.
Oh, for sure. The only certainty you can ever truly rely on is a climate of uncertainty.
Now, Abbott actually grounds this idea of extreme volatility in a very stark contemporary geopolitical example.
He does, yes. He points to the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran.
Right, noting the severe risk of it escalating into a regional conflict with consequences extending far beyond the borders of the Middle East.
Exactly. And I think we need to pause here and be very explicit for you listening.
Yes, absolutely. We are entirely impartial on this.
We are not taking sides or endorsing any political viewpoints whatsoever.
Not at all. We are simply impartially reporting Abbott's example to show how a geopolitical crisis thousands of miles away can disrupt systems overnight.
Because Abbott specifically highlights how the impact of that conflict on business systems in places like Kenya and East Africa will not be subtle at all.
Right. It's about the ripple effect.
Yeah.
You simply cannot put that level of global disruption into a neat little 5-year corporate forecast.
No, you can't. That is the crucial takeaway. You cannot predict the exact nature, timing, or severity of the disruption.
Whether it's an economic crash,
Yeah.
a sudden technological shift like AI.
Or of a global conflict disrupting a shipping lane.
Right.
But you can prepare your mindset for that disruption. This is where Abbott brings in the philosopher George Santayana,
Who famously said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it."
Exactly. If we look at history, we see how great leaders navigated seemingly impossible existential uncertainty without relying on rigid master plans.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the article brings in Winston Churchill to illustrate this exact point.
Yes, it cites Lawrence Friedman's incredible book, Strategy, A History.
Right. So I want you to picture the scene. It is May 10th, 1940.
The German army has just begun a massive blitzkrieg offensive.
In merely 10 days, they tear completely through Belgium and Holland, reaching the French coast.
Soon after, France falls.
And Britain is left standing completely alone against what appeared to be an unstoppable war machine.
The position was terrifying.
It appeared entirely hopeless.
So put yourself in that room. The question becomes, did Winston Churchill, sitting there as the wartime prime minister, facing imminent invasion and the potential collapse of Western civilization?
Did he have a plan?
Right. Did he have a brilliant, perfectly detailed, step-by-step master plan for victory?
Wait, you're setting this up to tell me that the guy who famously said, "We shall fight on the beaches," and rallied an entire empire was basically just winging it?
Well, not winging it, but he definitely did not have a master plan.
Wow.
According to Friedman, Churchill couldn't possibly have known the likely course of the war at that moment, and more importantly, he didn't view strategy as a blueprint.
He distrusted that kind of thinking.
He deeply distrusted what he called cut-and-dried calculations. He understood that the steps to victory might not even be visible until you were right on top of them, about to take them.
Because Churchill was actually a keen painter himself.
Yes.
This is where the Da Vinci connection comes roaring back. He viewed strategy not as a hard science of logistics and timelines, but as an art form.
Exactly. Friedman writes that Churchill's approach to strategy was so art-like, it was close to painting.
That's incredible.
He held a general image of what had to be achieved, national survival, the defeat of tyranny, but he worked out the tentative details as he went along.
He was adapting to the canvas as the paint dried.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this completely dismantles the illusion of the corporate master plan that so many executives worship today.
It really does.
There is a world of difference between a fanciful, top-down, rigid 5-year master plan handed down from the C-suite and a living, breathing strategy based on daily learning and adaptation.
Because in reality, it's the small, adaptable decisions taken by people throughout an organization that make the difference.
Right, people reacting to local conditions on the ground. That often moves a company to unanticipated successful places.
But to make those smart, localized decisions, you can't just be looking at surface-level dashboards.
No, you can't.
Which brings us right back to Leonardo da Vinci and how he operated. He didn't just paint what was on the surface.
He worked from the inside out.
Right. Abbott makes a really helpful analogy here. When you look at a page in a book, you don't actually read the whole page at once.
You consume the words one by one, sentence by sentence.
You dissect the small elements to understand the whole. And Leonardo was absolutely obsessed with dissecting the smallest details to understand how the whole machine worked.
And this inside-out approach is where the true genius of problem-solving lies. You have to understand the fundamental microscopic components of a problem before you can design the overarching solution.
If you only look at the surface, your solutions will always be superficial.
Exactly. You have to know what is underneath.
I am so glad you mentioned what is underneath the surface.
Oh boy, here we go.
Because Abbott includes this wild, incredibly memorable detail from Walter Isaacson's biography of Da Vinci.
It is unforgettable.
Everyone knows the Mona Lisa. We all know the enigmatic smile of this silk merchant's young wife that has captivated the world for 5 centuries.
Right.
But Isaacson's biography reveals the intensely physical way Leonardo actually figured out how to paint it.
It is a stunning and frankly gruesome reality.
Yeah.
To understand that smile, Leonardo spent his nights in the depths of the morgue under the hospital of Santa Maria Nuova in Florence.
Just picture that.
In the damp and the cold, by flickering candlelight, the greatest artist of his generation was literally peeling the flesh off human cadavers.
He was acting more like a medieval anatomist than a painter.
Yeah.
Hold on, he was actually peeling flesh off cadavers just to paint a smile on a piece of wood.
Yes.
That sounds more like a bizarre medical obsession than an artistic one. What was he actually looking for down there?
Isaacson explains that Leonardo became fiercely fascinated by how a smile actually begins to form biologically.
Okay.
He didn't just want to mimic the shape of lips. He instructed himself to analyze every possible movement of each part of the human face. He exposed the facial muscles. He exposed the nerves underneath those muscles. He determined the exact origin of every single nerve that controlled each facial muscle.
That is dedication.
He even traced which of those nerves were cranial and which were spinal.
Okay, tracing a nerve back to the spine has absolutely nothing to do with mixing paint on a palette.
Exactly.
That is way beyond the scope of his commission.
Precisely. Tracing a nerve to the spine was not strictly necessary to paint a beautiful portrait. A lesser artist would have just looked at a smiling model and approximated it.
But Leonardo needed to know.
He needed to know. He possessed this deep, insatiable curiosity about the underlying mechanics of reality. And that profound curiosity is exactly what separates a merely good product from a true masterpiece.
So how does a modern business leader apply that? Obviously, we aren't telling project managers to go find a morgue.
No, but you have to find the metaphorical morgue of your industry.
I like that.
If you were building a new software platform or designing a global supply chain, do you just look at the glossy user interface and the high-level revenue metrics?
Or do you have the curiosity to dig down into the muscles and nerves?
Right. The legacy code, the warehouse logistics, the raw material sourcing.
Right.
Do you truly understand the deep, hidden architecture of your own industry?
That is such a powerful challenge for anyone listening. Are you willing to peel back the layers to understand how things really work?
Because let's be honest, doing that requires an immense amount of time, patience, and resources.
It does. And that leads us to a massive clash with modern corporate culture. I want you to reflect for a moment on the business environment we operate in today.
It's all about speed.
We are entirely addicted to measures of efficiency. We track every minute of the workday. We aim to extract maximum productivity from our staff.
Right.
We want things shipped, delivered, and monetized as fast as humanly possible so we can hit the next quarterly earnings call.
This raises an important question. Do our modern notions of productivity actually prevent us from doing our best, most innovative work?
That's a great question.
If we genuinely want to create the business equivalent of a work of art, a product or a service that changes the landscape, perhaps our perspective on productivity needs a lot more nuance.
Absolutely.
Absolute efficiency is great if you are running a factory assembly line, but it is a terrible environment for profound innovation.
To put that clash into perspective, let's look at the actual timeline for the Mona Lisa.
Oh, this is wild.
If I go to my boss and say, my next project is going to follow the Da Vinci method, I'm probably getting fired.
You're definitely getting fired.
Because Abbott points out that Leonardo started working on the Mona Lisa in 1503. Fast forward to 1519, and he was still fine-tuning the details.
That is 16 years on a single portrait.
And the details from Isaacson's biography make this timeline even more incredible. Leonardo never actually delivered the painting to the silk merchant who commissioned it.
No.
Yeah.
And judging from his bank records, he never collected a single coin for it either.
But what did he do with it?
He kept the painting with him. He strapped that piece of poplar wood to his luggage and carried it across Florence to Milan to Rome and finally over the Alps to France, where he died 16 years after he began it.
He just carried a client's project around with him for a decade and a half. From a modern business standpoint, that is the ultimate failure to launch. Why didn't he just ship the product?
Because for Leonardo, the work was never truly finished. It was simply abandoned at death.
Oh.
Over those 16 years, he treated that panel as a living repository of his knowledge.
Yeah.
He just kept adding those microscopically thin Sfumato layers of glaze.
Always refining.
Always. He would
Yeah.
touch it up, refine it, and imbue it with new depths of understanding about human anatomy and nature.
So every time he learned something new, it went on the canvas.
Exactly. Whenever a new insight struck him, maybe something he learned from dissecting a new muscle in the morgue, or a new appreciation for how light bends through the atmosphere at dusk, his brush would alight gently on the panel yet again.
He allowed his continuous learning to continually reshape the product over time.
Yes.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, navigating your own complex problems and strategies today?
It's the big question.
It means that true breakthrough problem solving might not be about rushing headlong to an arbitrary finish line just to satisfy a metric.
Right. It might not be about hitting a rigid launch date with a perfectly executed, completely inflexible master plan.
It's about embracing the slow, iterative layering of insights. It's about letting your strategy evolve as you learn more about the reality of the world you operate in.
Let's pull all these threads together because this deep dive has really challenged the standard corporate playbook from multiple angles.
It really has. We started with the importance of sketching out a rough, adaptable vision rather than locking in a rigid plan on day one.
And then we explored the Sfumato technique, this beautiful, hazy blending of thin layers that teaches us to iteratively test and refine our ideas based on reality.
Rather than forcing reality to fit our harsh outline.
Right.
We also looked at the harsh truth of uncertainty. Abbott used the geopolitical realities of today, and we looked at the historical crucible of Winston Churchill in May 1940.
To prove that survival requires abandoning those rigid master plans.
You have to view strategy as an art form, painting the tentative details as the landscape changes around you.
And of course, we talked about having the sheer, audacious curiosity to dig deep into the hidden nerves and muscles of your industry.
Just like Leonardo peeling flesh in the morgue, so you can build your solutions from the inside out.
It represents a complete paradigm shift away from the modern cult of immediate efficiency and unthinking productivity. It asks you to prioritize depth, foundational understanding, and extreme adaptability over sheer speed.
It really does. And before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've talked about all these historical techniques, but how do they change us personally?
Consider this. What if we radically changed our relationship with our own work?
Yep.
If we stopped viewing our daily output as mere tasks to be completed, checked off a list, and shipped out as quickly as possible?
Right.
And instead, what if we started treating our most important projects like the Mona Lisa?
I love that idea.
Imagine treating your career's major initiatives as living canvases that travel with you through different stages of your life, always waiting for the next thin glaze of your newly acquired wisdom and insight.
Wow.
How might that completely change the quality, the depth, and ultimately the lasting legacy of what you leave behind?
That is a brilliant image to end on. A living canvas waiting for your next insight. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. I hope this conversation has given you a new lens through which to view your daily challenges. Keep questioning the linear path, stay fiercely curious about what's beneath the surface, and we'll catch you next time.